Due to copyright, I can't publish many audiobooks on YouTube. At our audiobook novel service, we offer access to over 300 full novels from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, Wuxia, and more, all in high-quality audio format. Each novel is available with a one-time payment only. No subscriptions, no monthly payment, and no ads. Payments via PayPal or Ko-fi. To browse the full list of available novels, message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out our full catalog on Discord. Chapter 637. Locked. 4. Temple of the Goddess of Light. Within the private chambers of the temple, several figures sat, all staring towards the white-garbed figure. His presence eclipsed that of all those present as the Luminarch looked around. Has anything been found yet? The meeting was being held to address the ongoing red tide and the possibility of it being a man-made disaster. No, nothing yet. A short man with neatly combed black hair and a long nose answered as he held onto several papers. He was the temple's member secretary. He was essentially in charge of handling all of the reports and news received by the emissaries. While there have been some unusual movements from the land of the great god of creation, Veltris, we've observed nothing out of the ordinary from the other lands. In truth, I don't believe any of them intend to interfere. They're simply too far. I see. The land within the mirror dimension was divided between the 5 gods. Of those 5 gods, the land of creation was the closest one to theirs. They controlled a major part of the upper world, or what was once known as Russia. If it had to be anyone who could interfere with them, then it had to be them. There was also Chlora's land, but it was unlikely that they'd be able to reach it. They were simply too far. Do you have any idea why strange movements are coming from those of the land of creation? The Luminarch asked while staring at the member secretary. This piece of news was nothing to make short of. No, unfortunately, our spies weren't able to pick up anything. The member secretary shook his head. They're being very careful, so it's hard to determine anything. However, from what we've managed to gather, it doesn't seem like it has anything to do with us. I believe it's an ongoing conflict between them and the Land of Foundations. Goddess Chlora's faction against great god Veltris? The Luminarch raised his brow. This was quite an interesting development. For what reason could the two lands be fighting? Those two usually never got into conflicts. In fact, those two were usually the ones who avoided conflicts the most. For them to suddenly do something like this, it must be something really important. The Luminarch pressed his hand against the table before making a decision. Send more people to investigate the matter. Get in contact with the other temples and spread the news to them. We need to keep watch of the situation. The situation might not be as simple as it looks on the surface. Understood. The member secretary answered promptly, jotting down several things on a small notepad he retrieved from his pocket. Pursing his lips, the Luminarch leaned back on his chair. His fingers drummed over the table. If there's no outside interference, what could have caused the great primordial one to interfere like this? The Luminarch's brows pressed together tightly. He had already informed the other Luminarchs present within the nearby cities about the situation, with them sending backups for the inevitable situation. However, if the great primordial one showed up, he'd be completely helpless. Although he was near the 9th tier, he was still far from being able to put up a fight with such a monster. The only thing he could do at this very moment was hope that things wouldn't escalate to that point. But would they really not? It was hard to tell. The Luminarch's hand came to a sudden pause as his gaze fell on the door of the room. His eyes narrowed shortly after as he stood up. And then, bang! The door burst open. What the? What's going on? All members stood up as they turned to look in the direction of the door, where a haggard figure appeared, holding onto the side of his arm as his chest rose and fell repeatedly. Ha! Ha! The moment his features became apparent, the Luminarch's expression changed. He recognized the one in question immediately. Silas. How could he not? He was one of the few people who could threaten him within the city. It was only natural for him to recognize him. But how did he become like this? What happened? Help. Silas mumbled, his face pale as he looked pleadingly towards the Luminarch. I've found out the ones responsible for all of this. His voice was haggard, and he looked to be struggling to even get a few words out. Hollowed, Primordial One, and Merchant. He was hardly making any sense, but he said enough words to give an idea to the Luminarch. He also paused at his last word. Merchant? The Luminarch thought about the recent news about a wandering merchant from afar, and how he had been selling very rare goods into the city, matching the timing of his appearance with the situation, and surely, it can't be a coincidence, right? But as if that wasn't enough to plant a seed of doubt in the Luminarch's mind, Silas's words echoed again. This time, his words were a lot easier to understand. Underwater. I noticed something strange and I investigated with, and It was a trap. She, alongside the merchant, tried to ambush me underwater. Thankfully, I managed to escape, but I saw them break some sort of altar. The great primordial one, he's coming. He's already locked his position on them. What? Everyone's eyes widened at the news, and as the Luminarch took in the information, he took a long and dragged-out breath. Eventually, his eyes sharpened. Someone go and find their location and relay it to me. If it's true that they've been marked by the great primordial one, kill them on the spot. Finding out whether they had been marked wasn't hard. The church had the necessary tools to be able to tell after getting close enough. I'll get moving. A terrifying aura seeped out from the Luminarch's body as he moved out of the room. He had to get rid of the problem as quickly as possible. What he didn't notice as he left the room was the quiet curling of Silas's lips as he gradually sat up. Shah! The water ran down the sink as I stared at my own reflection. My face gradually contorted as I stared at myself. I don't know if the situation is good or not. My chest felt heavy as I looked at myself. The more I looked, the more my appearance felt less foreign. I was starting to get used to this appearance of mine, that of Lazarus. So much so that for just brief moments, I felt like this was what my true appearance was. The moments were small, but it was starting to become clear to me. The boundaries between my personality and Lazarus were starting to shrink. I was threading dangerous territory. I'm immersing myself too much. I started to worry about the consequences of my actions. What would happen if I immersed myself in the character for too much? Would I slowly just end up becoming Lazarus? Then what about the current me? The thought felt heavy in my heart. Although this persona was necessary in order for me to reach the 5th tier, I was starting to worry. If Cithras has already reached the 5th level, does that mean that he went through something like this? I swallowed silently. What were the results for him? Was he able to return to how he once was, or... Who? I took a deep breath, brushing my hair back. Lazarus stared at his reflection as the water trickled down the side of his face. He stared at his well-defined features before reaching for his glasses next to him. He was just about to put them on when his hand paused. Ha! I let out another breath. This time, my chest trembled as I stared at the glasses in my hand. This is worse than I expected. I wasn't even trying to become Lazarus again, and yet the persona just automatically tried to settle itself into my mind, constantly taking over for brief moments of time. I can't allow that. Things were getting a little bit too dangerous for my own comfort. I needed to take some time to properly address this issue. But for now, I retrieved a certain piece of coral and placed it in the water inside the sink. It's been a while. You still struggling to recover? I tapped the coral several times in hopes of seeing some movement. However, it still didn't move at all. I could tell that it was still alive, but something about it felt off. What exactly was the reason? Pebble? Do you have any idea? The only thing I could do was call Pebble and ask for its opinion. Surely Pebble might know something, considering that it is also a monster. But, no, nothing. Pebble shook its head as it sat by the sink, staring at the coral with its deep eyes. Pebble extended its paw and touched the coral. I've never seen something like this before. No, wait. Pebble leaned forward and started to sniff the coral. I was a little taken aback by the sight. Why did Pebble feel the need to sniff the coral? But soon enough I saw a reaction from Pebble. This? What? What is it? Did you notice something? No. But I think I know who might have an idea. Pebble's tone was grave as it looked at the coral. Cocked my head. Who? Who else but that stupid owl? From the looks of things, this monster was affected by some sort of mind spell. Considering how it's still alive but unresponsive, it's the only thing I can think of. Pebble soon turned its head to look at me. You're not much different. Your mind also appears to be affected. Oh, but mine was because of something else entirely. Or was it? I thought about my current predicament and the timing of it. Now that I thought about it, everything started to go wrong with me the moment that I came back out of the water. Could there be a correlation to the situation? You're right. Something about this entire situation feels off. I guess I'll... Knock. Knock. An abrupt, yet loud knocking sound echoed throughout the room. Hastily turning my head, I saw the door of the bathroom smash open as a figure entered. Get out. We've got a situation. Eh? The emissaries of the Temple of Light are coming to us. Chapter 638. Wanted one. What's going on here? What are you doing? Anne's voice echoed across the city's port as her curly hair fluttered in the wind. She stood atop her shop, gazing down at the sudden swarm of emissaries from the Temple of Light. Her brows furrowed tightly upon seeing them. There were so many of them that she couldn't count their exact number. What are they doing here? Why did they suddenly come? Though she didn't fear them, she was still deeply apprehensive about the situation. Something about this entire thing felt off. Is nobody going to say a single thing? Her words once again echoed throughout the port as she looked down at the emissaries. But yet again, she received no answers. Her entire demeanor started to shift from there as a certain pressure started to spread out from her body and onto the emissaries beneath. She was starting to lose her patience. If none of you are going to answer then, relax, calm down. Let's keep this civil. Just as tensions began to rise, a soft voice cut through the pressure. In the distance, a figure draped in white appeared, his face hidden behind a golden mask. The emissaries silently parted to let him pass. Eh? Anne's brow raised upon seeing him. Luminarch Jaffiel? That is indeed me. The Luminarch came to a stop just right beneath her ship, his head tilted to look at her. The moment he appeared, Anne's entire demeanor changed as the pressure coming out from her body started to fade. By no means was she scared of the man who stood before her. However, something about him had always made her uncomfortable. It was for that reason that she actively decided to back down. She would much rather talk than have things go bad. A thin smile spread across her lips as she looked down. What have I done to grace me with your presence? Nothing yet, the Luminarch said, his voice light and calm. From the way he spoke, it really did seem like he was coming in peace. That made Anne even more uncomfortable. The harder it was to see through his intentions, the more complicated the situation felt. Is that so? But I'm not so sure I can believe your words when you showed up with so many people. Oh, pardon me for that. The Luminarch looked around him. As you know, times are rather tough right now. In order to go out, the temple has insisted on bringing a lot of people. This is all for my protection. Protection? I find that hard to believe, and almost wanted to laugh. He was one of the strongest people within the city. There was hardly anyone who could pose a threat to him within the city. Haha. Seeing her reaction, the Luminarch laughed. He laughed for a few seconds before looking around. I guess you're right, but who am I to reject their offer? Aren't they cute in their own way for wanting to protect me? Cute, and looked at him in disgust. She could clearly see that he was wasting time talking with her. What was he trying to do? What was he trying to achieve? Her sharp eyes scanned the surroundings as she tried her best to see any strange movement. However, regardless of where she looked, she couldn't see anything strange about the situation. So then? What exactly was he planning? Anne's heart grew restless as she settled her gaze back towards the Luminarch. Just as her lips were about to part, a figure walked up towards the Luminarch, whispering something into his ears, and tried to peer through the conversation, but she could only hear faint bits of it. Something along the lines of, targeted, he was right, must get rid, danger. Ah! As her eyelids fluttered, she looked towards the Luminarch again as she saw him staring at her, his features hidden within his golden mask. However, despite the mask hiding his features, in that very moment, Anne felt that he was smiling, that he had some sort of sickening smile beneath the mask. She felt the hair at the back of her neck rise as she grew tense. I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you. Anne's lips pressed tightly, her eyes narrowing as she looked down at the Luminarch. She started to have a sinking feeling that things were about to turn for the worse. I've just had someone look at you and, well, the Luminarch moved his head left and right as he tried his best to put things nicely for her. In the end, he sighed and just went straight to the point. You're currently marked by the Great Primordial One. Ha! Anne's face blanked. Marked by the Great Primordial One? When? What? Not just you, but a couple of others within the ship have been marked. He pinched the lower end of his mask. Taking a look at your expression, you most likely don't seem to be aware of it. Or maybe you're pretending like you don't know. The Luminarch's eyes narrowed beneath. If my guess is correct, then you all must have fallen for some sort of scheme devised by Captain Silas. I did notice that his injuries were a bit off. Only a few matched the type of weapon that you use. Silas. Anne's eyes widened. You've met him? Then you should quickly go back to him. He's not. It doesn't matter. I've already marked him. He won't be able to get away even if he wants to. Just as I'm going to deal with you, I'm going to deal with him. Jaffiel smiled as he looked at Anne. I can also extract all the information that I want after I take you in. Well, if I take you in. Given the current situation, taking you in might not be ideal. In fact, I should be dealing with you as we speak. He raised his hand, and the emissaries next to him got into battle positions, their weapons drawn. You don't have to do this. Anne's expression darkened at the sight presented before her. Looking back towards her own crew, she mumbled, "Get ready," as they similarly drew their weapons while looking down at the emissaries. The tensions escalated as Anne looked at the Luminarch. He could only shake his head upon seeing her reaction. I'm sure you understand why I have to do this, right? It's not that I want to be unreasonable, but it's more about the fact that I have no choice but to be unreasonable. You're currently targeted by the primordial one. If you stay here, then you'll be putting the entire city in danger. The only real option we have is to kill you. Is there really no way we can talk about this? The Luminarch shook his head. Like I said, we have no choice in this matter. He gestured with his hands once more, and the emissaries started to release their own pressure. Taking out her whip, Anne's entire demeanor changed as she took a deep breath. Very well. She looked at her crew next to her. It was just as she was about to attack when her expression changed as she hastily turned back and raised her whip. Clank! A loud metallic sound rang in the air as sparks flew across. What the? Anne's expression changed drastically when she saw several of her own crew members turn their weapons on her. What are you doing? Why are you? Sorry about that, Captain. This one might be on me. It was the Luminarch who spoke again as he looked at her from below. He looked at her with interest. Your people were a lot more loyal than expected, but in the end, under our constant offers, we've managed to turn quite a few on our side. We've long known about your movements. What the? What? The Luminarch cocked his head. Did you really think we would let you dominate the Crimson Sea because we're nice? Ha ha ha. The Luminarch laughed while shaking his head. Eventually, however, his tone and expression turned serious. We value order above all. The only reason you're free to sail the seas is because we permit it. If we wished, we could take full control. The temple saw no need to interfere directly when you were already keeping the waters in check on our behalf. Naturally, to preserve that balance, we had no choice but to place several spies among you. He looked around. And I guess that worked out for the best. In any case, he nudged the people next to him. It's time we finished this. I hope that you forg. What's going on here? A certain voice cut through the Luminarch's voice as a certain figure walked into the main dock, stopping to see the numerous people surrounding the ship. His gaze was sharp, his jawline chiseled, and every aspect of him radiated refinement and elegance. Staring at the situation, the man slowly put on his glasses before eventually, his gaze fell on the Luminarch. Huh! Many of those on the boat grew startled at the sight of him. How did he appear without them noticing? Even Anne was shocked. However, she quickly clenched her teeth as she looked at the ones surrounding the merchant. They had all once been her people. For them to turn on her like that, how could this have happened? Anne's heart sank into the deepest depths. She thought she had treated them well, and yet, she had been too naive. The spies began to surround the merchant shortly after. And yet, in spite of the situation, he looked completely unbothered as he maintained eye contact with the Luminarch. Tilting his head, the Luminarch thought for a moment before saying, You must be the merchant. You know me? I've heard a little bit about you. This is the first time I'm seeing you, though. Jophiel calmly nodded his head while looking at the merchant. At first glance, he didn't look like much. A hidden tier 6 with nothing really special about him besides his origin. Jophiel was curious about his true identity, but it was just unfortunate that he was also marked by the primordial one. He had to go too. What a pity. Jophiel shook his head before nudging the emissaries next to him. Get rid of them. We have to be as fast as possible so that we can prevent the red tide. Understood. The emissaries moved alongside the spies on the ship. As this happened, the merchant remained indifferent. No, rather, a thin smile spread across his lips. He's smiling? The moment Jophiel caught sight of the smile, his expression changed. Something felt off. He suddenly started to have a bad feeling. But before he could understand it, a red leaf slowly fell on the ground. Red leaf? Jophiel blinked his eyes. Then, slowly raising his head, he saw an owl standing right above them, its deep eyes staring at them. Bah! Thump! Bah! Thump! For some reason, staring at the owl, Jophiel felt his heart beat louder than ever. It was so loud that it started to drum inside his mind. What sort of... Splash! 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 What the... Hey, watch out! Water suddenly splashed across the port as figures surged up from the depths, leaping onto the dock. Once their silhouettes became clear, the faces of many changed as they realized they were all statues. Be careful, move back. Lazarus raised his hand and forced the people back as he stared at the statues. Though they didn't appear strong, he could still feel they'd pose a threat to quite a few present. What was happening? Splash! Splash! This continued as more and more statues emerged, appearing from all sides, their presence not lacking many of the emissaries present. And as if the situation wasn't getting already bad enough, a thick fog started to shroud the entire area. Careful! Where is this from? What's going on? Jophiel waved his hand to disperse the fog, but it was to his shock to see that he couldn't do it all. What? Eventually, Jophiel raised his head. It was also then that his gaze locked with that of the merchant as he stared at him with a thin, yet calm smile. That's when Jophiel started to feel them. Chills. If you want access to fast updates or the full novel in high-quality audio, contact me now and buy. I offer over 300 complete audiobooks from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, and more. No locked episodes, no subscriptions, just one-time payment via PayPal or Ko-fi. Message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out the full list of available novels on Discord. Start listening to your next favorite audiobook today.